Hello! I know I haven't streamed in a little while, so today I'm going to be doing another tier list stream. Let me get things set up really quick. There we go. So today what I'm going to be streaming is a tier list of the cast of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, because this is my favorite cartoon of all time, and I've been thinking about it a lot recently again. So I'm going to go through and make a tier list of the characters from the show. And also this time I also did customize the names of the tiers just to make it a little more fun. So we got the worst possible thing, which is a little exaggerative, but it's just a reference to the show with Rarity. Neutral Shrug. Fine, but could be cooler. Soft Yay. Awesome. And Best Pony / Creature. Let me get that actually off the screen, that little... There, that's better. So, let's get this tier list started. I guess it starts here in sequential order with the main six. So, starting with Twilight Sparkle. I think she's actually a really good main character. Especially early on, I think she's great. She's just really reserved, really dorky, really book smart. But the whole thing about her coming out of her comfort zone and making friends is a very interesting, relatable character arc, and she's just a very relatable, entertaining, fun main character. If I'm being honest, I feel like some of the roles they put her into later in the show kind of change her character. Not exactly for the worst, but just to a degree where she feels like kind of a different character sometimes as the show goes on. But in those first couple of seasons, I think she's a genuinely fantastic character, and also sometimes later on, I think as well. I think that I'm going to put her in awesome tier for now. We can see how that changes from here on out. Yes, Twilight's a very, very good main character. Next up, we have Rainbow Dash, who I'm also definitely going to put in the awesome tier, which makes sense because a reference to her in the tier name. Specifically, she's a very cocky, brash, arrogant character, but also a very entertaining and fun one. She's not always the most... I don't know. She has a rough appearance here and there, but overall, I think all the main characters in the show are great, and Rainbow Dash is no exception, even if she's not one of my absolute favorites. She does also have a lot of good development throughout the show, like her becoming a Wonderbolt and her trying to also... I feel like she's kind of wishy-washy with this, but also her trying to rein in her arrogance a little bit, which she does sometimes. Overall, I think she's a very fun and entertaining character, all things considered, though. Alright. Next up, we have Pinkie Pie, which is automatically going up to the best pony tier. I just think she's a really funny, really cute, really likable, charming character. Can she be annoying sometimes? Sure, but I think more often than not, she's a very positive, upbeat, entertaining character that I just love to watch. Her whole life's goal of wanting to make as many other ponies smile as possible, I think is a very admirable and entertaining one. I think she's just a very fun, likable, rootable character who is also very constantly hilarious. Rarity, I also think, is a very underrated character. I'm actually going to put her above Rainbow Dash. She's a very she's a very elegant, eloquently spoken character that I think a lot of people overlook because they're like, when a lot of people I think start watching the show, specifically like the brony demographic and less like the little girl demographic, they're like, oh, this is like the girly one. She's my least favorite. I don't really like her that much. She's prissy and annoying. But I'm like, I personally think she's one of the more well-rounded and interesting characters in the entire show. Specifically, her character arc of like becoming like an entrepreneur and just like going up in the fashion world, opening her boutiques like all over different places in Equestria. It's very impressive to see, and also she very much does stick to her element of generosity throughout the entire show. You think a character that's like this kind of like dramatic and over the top might not be the nicest. That's kind of like the assumption of the archetype, I guess. But she does live up to her element. She is a very kind, generous, helpful character. Also, debatably, might have the best singing voice of any character, maybe on the show as a whole, but definitely within the main six. Next up, we have Applejack. Very honest, very dependable, very hard-working character. She kind of does default to my least favorite of the main six, though, but that's not her fault. It's just because that's not because I dislike anything about Applejack. That's just because I specifically like things about all the other characters more. But I think she is also to a degree kind of like the glue that holds the group together. Like she's kind of like almost like the parent of the group who calls others out when they're doing something wrong and is very honest and firm with people, and is also just kind of like the most dependable, down to earth kind of voice of reason character in the main group. I don't know. She might not be the most flashy character, but she's definitely one that I'm glad is a part of the cast because she adds something very unique to the dynamic. Fluttershy. I don't think that placement's going to change. I think Fluttershy is going to stay up here in the top of the top tier, probably. I highly doubt anybody's going to kick her down from there. Easily my favorite of the main six. Easily my favorite character in this entire show. Genuinely also one of my favorite characters from anything of all time, even being blatantly honest. I just really relate to her arc of coming out of her shell and becoming more confident as the series goes on. A lot of people like to say she kind of learns the same lesson over and over again. Well, that is true to a degree. It is also kind of realistic that shy people who are specifically shy can be shy some days and be a little more outgoing other days, but then kind of go back into the shell the next day, because I'm kind of like that too. Or I'm more used to be, and I kind of still am, I guess, sometimes. But that's a very relatable part of her character to me. But she's also just lives up to her element as well as the element of kindness. She's incredibly sweet, incredibly nice. She is kind, but not really to the degree where she's just nice to anybody for any reason. If somebody's treating somebody wrong, she will point it out. If somebody needs to learn a lesson but might be a little bit of tough love, she will definitely point that out as well. She's not kind to a fault. Early on she might be, but as the show goes on and she develops and grows as a character, she definitely gets to the point where she can tell people how it is, or tell ponies how it is. I guess this is an LP tier list, and like help them out, like by not coddling them, but actually kind of like a firm like push in the right direction almost. She's also absolutely adorable. I think she's one of the cutest characters to exist. I could gush about Fluttershy all day, but we have a lot of characters to cover. Some of these might not be as long, but I want to get through all of these pretty efficiently. Spike goes for now in A tier. I like Spike, but I don't think he's the most flashy character. He's he's a very cute character and can occasionally be funny and is very helpful and is a very good assistant and kind of sibling to Twilight. But he's not like one of the parts of the show I look forward to that much, if I'm being honest. He's definitely he serves his purpose and does it well, but I think there's a reason why when it's a Spike centric episode, sometimes Spike centric episodes can be good, but other times I think I get it when people say he has some of the weaker episodes of the show as well. I personally think he works better as a side character than a main focusing role. I mean, he does have a couple episodes where I do think he's good at that, but not all of them are like that though. Like people say Applejack kind of is the background character of the main cast, but honestly, I feel like the one that kind of like goes to the back of my mind more than Applejack when it comes to the main cast is actually Spike. I sometimes kind of forget that he's there sometimes, even though I do think he's a good part of the cast. I don't know. I do like Spike overall, though. That being said, one aspect of the show I wish they would have dropped a lot sooner than they did was Spike's crush on Rarity. Like, of course, nothing ever came of it, but at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know. This running gag's kind of annoying. Could we cut it off? But they didn't really acknowledge it properly until like the final season. But I'm like, better late than never. But I don't know. I guess they acknowledged it eventually. So whatever. Next, we got the CMC, starting with. You think they'd rank Apple Bloom first among this if we're going in order, but I guess we're starting with Sweetie Belle. Sweetie Belle is a great character. But where would I rank her for now? Would I rank Sweetie Belle? I would rank Sweetie Belle above Spike, but would I rank her above any other members of the main six? For now, no. I think I'll leave Sweetie Belle at the bottom of Awesome tier for now. I think of the CMC, she is kind of. I think she actually is kind of the voice of reason of that group too, kind of like Applejack is to the main group, because Apple Bloom's the more adventurous one who wants to be like, oh, Cutie Mark Crusaders, blah blah blah, to try to get the Cutie Marks. I mean, they're all like that to an extent, but I actually feel like Apple Bloom's the most headstrong in that regard, whereas Scootaloo is also kind of rambunctious in her own right and kind of like that. But Sweetie Belle, I feel like, is the kind of like the one that balances the group out. She also probably has the best singing group of the CMC. I don't know. Good character. Scootaloo is easily my favorite member of the CMC, and honestly, I think. Would I put Scootaloo? Would I put any of the CMC above any of the main six? I don't necessarily think so. Not right now, at least. I'm putting Scootaloo above Sweetie Belle, though, because I think her character arc dealing with her inability to fly is a very well handled arc that I think the show treats with respect. Like, it's kind of like they treat her small wings and her not being able to fly kind of like a disability, which it is in the universe, and I think they actually do handle that with tact throughout the series. I also specifically think she has some of the stronger CMC specific focused episodes as well. I'm actually not sure with. No, off the top of my head, the best CMC episode is probably the big one, Crusaders of the Lost Mark. But Sleepless in Ponyville Scootaloo is definitely up there as well. That was just a very sweet, touching episode. Apple Bloom. I think I'd put above Spike, but not any higher for now. Yeah, I think, as I was saying earlier, she's a very rambunctious character who almost wants to grow up too fast. She really wants to get her cutie mark. I mean, all the CMC do, but she's like the leader of the CMC, so I feel like she's the one that's pushing it the most. I don't know. She's a very cute character, but also kind of. I feel like the other two CMC members to me have a little bit more interesting personalities than she does. Not that she doesn't have an interesting personality as well, but I feel like those characters are a little more dynamic and interesting in my opinion. But I still do like Apple Bloom, even though I don't really think I have a lot to say about her. She's cute and she's funny and she's very entertaining, but she's not my favorite of the group. I wonder why they have the young six so early. That's interesting. I thought they'd have them later on this list, and the royalty is all the way back here. That's fascinating. I don't think there's any. Yeah, I don't think I see any of the Equestria Girls characters on here interested in that. Anyway, moving on. By the way, I didn't make this tier list, so if there's any characters missing, I don't know. I don't make it. So back to the list and to the Young Six now. We start with Yona, who is actually my favorite member of the Young Six, who I would at least put here. I think it might. Some people might find it blasphemous for me to put a member of the Young Six over any member of the CMC, but Yona is my favorite of the Young Six, and honestly, is easily my favorite yak in the series because honestly, Rutherford and the other yaks are. They get their narrative purpose done, they get the job done, but honestly, they're not the most interesting characters in the world. But I do think Yona is a very dynamic, interesting, entertaining character, though. I think she's really cute, and I think also her becoming friends with the other characters of the other creature races is very interesting. I think that's a kind of a dynamic of the Young Six as a whole, and something you can say about all of them. But I just like how positive she is, or also how much she doesn't seem to know her own strength. I mean, no, I think she does actually, but oftentimes it feels like she's stronger than she appears to be as well. I don't know, she's just a very sweet character who gets actually one of the most interesting character arcs throughout the show of any of the Young Six specifically. Alright, we got Sandbar, who, if I'm being honest, he's fine. I think he's probably my least favorite of the Young Six, because I think the interesting thing about the Young Six is that a lot of them represent different creature races in MLP. But of course, I think it does make sense that they have a pony among that group as well, because most of Equestria is ponies. But I feel like that just makes them stand out less than the other characters. I do think Sandbar gets the job done well enough for the position he is in, though. He kind of has like almost like that. He has almost like a laid back, calm, almost like surfer dude personality to me. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's at least the vibe I get from Sandbar. And I do think his relationship with Yona later on is kind of cute as well. I just don't think he's the most dynamic character in the show, I guess. He's fine, he gets the job done in the position he's in, but I don't think he's great in that regard, though. Silverstream is a lot of fun, though. I think I'm going to put her at the bottom of awesome tier so far. Honestly, I think structurally she is actually a pretty similar character to Skystar from the movie. But ultimately, I think I actually like Silverstream a lot more than Skystar because since she's in the show, the main show, for a lot longer, I feel like that makes her a lot more of a dynamic, interesting, well fleshed out character than Skystar was just within the confines of the movie. I don't know. I feel like Silverstream is almost like the equivalent of Pinkie Pie to the Young Six because she's the most fun, she's the most like excitable of them, and I feel like she almost has a very similar kind of sense of humor to Pinkie Pie. But also, I feel like she might also have a little bit of inspiration from like almost Ariel from The Little Mermaid in the way where she seems to be amazed by like the things of the surface world. I don't know. She seems like a very just like happy, easily excitable character, and I think that gives her a fun personality. Smolder, I think, is also one of the funner members of the Young Six, and I do actually think I'd say I like her better than Silverstream. I don't know. She's kind of almost like oddly. This might be an interesting thing to say about a character that's not an anime character, but I feel like she's almost oddly, almost like a tsundere-ish character, where she starts off as kind of like a jerk and kind of standoffish, but as you get to know her better and she develops more, she starts to lighten up and becomes like a more, I don't know, just a more chill, fun character to hang out with. I don't know. Specifically, I found her relationship with Spike kind of interesting because I feel like early in the series, for the longest time, Spike was the only dragon until he went to the Dragonlands, but that didn't turn out so well the next time, but the first time. So I feel like this is kind of the first dragon that Spike could kind of talk to on his level, which I think makes it kind of interesting. I don't know. I just think Smolder is a very fun character. Next up, Ocellus, I think, is also great, which I think I'd personally probably put her above Silverstream but below Smolder. Since she's kind of like the parallel of Fluttershy of the Young Six, of course I would actually very much like her as well because Fluttershy is probably my favorite character in the entire show. What did I say? Probably, definitely my favorite character in the entire show. But Ocellus, I don't feel like she gets as much screen time as some of the other members of the Young Six, but I do still feel like she's a very interesting, entertaining character, and I feel like the fact that she's a changeling also adds to that because she kind of like shapeshifts in certain situations when the situation calls for it. I don't know. I guess I don't have too much to say about some of these characters, but I do remember Ocellus being a very cute and fun character, and I do like her a lot. Next up, we got Gallus, the other male character of the Young Six, who I think I am going to put right here. I don't know. I think of the Griffin characters we have in the series, I'm not sure if Gallus is my favorite. It's either Gallus or Gabby, but I guess we'll have to get there to see which one it is, which one it ends up being. But I think Gallus is also another kind of really fun member of the Young Six. I feel like specifically he's very much the most sarcastic one and kind of jokey. He doesn't take everything seriously, but he does develop and grow over time and does get an interesting rapport with the other members of the Young Six. I do think he's a very fun character, but he also has what I think one of the most interesting designs of one of the Griffins we've seen in the series because most of the Griffins in MLP have very muted colors, but he's blue, so I think that actually makes him kind of pop among the other Griffin characters. Alright, can we get a drink of water real quick? Still a ways to go. But some of these will probably be real quick. Like, I don't think I have that much to say about the pet characters, so I'll probably go to them pretty quick. Except for this one, I'll save you for last of them because I think I know I'll have the most to say about you. Tank I like. He's a very simple character, but his episode introduction with in May the Best Pet Win with Rainbow Dash finding him to be a good pet even though they're opposite is a very sweet story, and I do think it's kind of fun that they put a propeller on his back so he can kind of fly around with Rainbow Dash. I think it's a very cute thing there. Aloysius, eh. It's a cute owl, I guess. It's fine, but if I'm being honest, I don't really care for the Who joke, and that's what I mostly think about when I think of Aloysius. Opal is a cat. Likes to kind of grumpy and likes to scratch up things whenever she's on screen. I don't know. Cat. Gummy, I think, is very cute. I like Gummy a lot. Gummy's probably my favorite of the pets. He's very blank-eyed and wide-eyed, and often has like that kind of like far off expression that kind of makes him seem aloof. But from his monologue and slice of life, it seems like he's a character with a lot more depth and layers than we are allowed to see, and I think that's a very interesting and funny part of his character. Well, known as a dog. Cute dog, fine. Angel Bunny. What do I say about Angel Bunny? He has some appearances where he's a little more tolerable, specifically towards the latter half of the series. But early on, Angel Bunny was a little shit, and I didn't really like him that much. Like, in She Talks to Angel, I think he had kind of an interesting dynamic with Fluttershy there, because he was inside of Fluttershy's body and controlling what she did. And I think that was kind of interesting to show off a little bit more of his personality than we usually see. But then we have an episode like Putting Your Hoof Down, where he's just a little nightmare. So, all things considered, I do think Angel Bunny's a more interesting character than Owlicious and Opal. But I still can't say I even kind of like him. I don't hate him. But I think I'm putting him in the neutral shrug tier. Even though I feel strongly about Angel Bunny, but it's just not exactly in the most positive way. Even though I wouldn't say outright hate the character either. Okay, I'm gonna arrange these slightly differently. Next we have right there. Put the pairs together. Next we have the background six, which we're starting with Lyra. In canon, she's a pretty fun, pretty excitable character, but not the most dynamic. And I think I'm only going to be counting canon stuff mostly here. But I will mention her fan stuff. Like, oh, she sat upright on a bench once in the show. So that must mean she's very interested in human culture and wants to go to the real human world and interact with humans. Which I always thought was an interesting headcanon, but a kind of fun one too. I will say, even though she's not the most dynamic character, because of course she's not even close to one of the most important characters in the show. I think, despite that, though, through either the canon of the show or the stuff that fans given to her, I do think Lyra is a likable enough character. Bon Bon / Special Agent Sweetie Drops. I also think it's very similar dynamic, but honestly, no. Probably still in this tier, but a little lower. I kind of wanted to put them side by side. If I'm being honest, that wasn't really true. Because honestly, I feel like in canon, Bon Bon's a little more interesting than Lyra actually is. But I don't feel like the fans have really given Bon Bon all that much, aside from the fact that they ship her with Lyra. Which I will mention, I do like in the show that they actually did get married in the end. I think that was actually a very nice touch for both their characters. They're both, even though they both had very brief appearances in the show, mostly in the background, I think they developed them in more interesting ways than I was expecting them to do so. I don't know, I don't think I have that much to say about. I don't think I have that much to say about Bon Bon though. Octavia. I definitely think has a little bit more going for her than some of the other background characters. So I'll put Octavia there. Within the show, early on she was mostly just seen in background shots, when they needed music played at special fancy events, she'd be playing her instrument in the background. But in Slice of Life, we saw she was Vinyl Scratch's roommate, and kind of is a fun character, but kind of has the personality you'd expect her to have, kind of the fancy, high-class orchestra member, which I think is fun. I think she's a fun character for what she is. Vinyl Scratch / DJ Pwn 3. I actually like more than a lot of these other background characters we've covered so far. Because I think she was just introduced as... I forgot exactly where she was introduced. Wasn't she introduced in the end at the wedding from A Candlelight Wedding. She was like the DJ at the after party. I don't know. I think that what the fandom did with Final Scratch is very interesting and very fun. Kind of making her almost like the dubstep pony early on, and kind of was like a DJ party girl as well. But I think the interesting about her in the canon of the show is she doesn't talk. I don't know if she's mute, but she never talks, which I find fascinating. Even though I still associate Final Scratch's voice, even though she doesn't have one in the show, I associate it with the voice that she had in all those early fan animations. Kind of like that gruff, tomboyish voice they all gave her. I don't know, I just think that's interesting. Call her Muffins, call her Bubbles, call her Derpy, but here we have Derpy Hooves. That's what I still call her, because that's what I first known her as. Even though she is not the most dynamic, fleshed out character and actually doesn't really ultimately have that many speaking roles in the show, and characters like Appleblossom and Spike have had a lot more screen time than she had in the show, there's just something undeniably charming about Derpy Hooves. She's just an incredibly cute, incredibly sweet character, despite her. No, I think her ditzy nature actually adds to her charm. I mean, the fact that they found like a background error in an early episode of the show that saw a background character with crossed eyes, and the fandom ran away with that character and turned her into a fully fleshed out character in the fandom sense, with like her own like personality and background and world. Like every single small sliver we got of her in canon turned into something that the fans latched onto and now added onto her character. I genuinely think Derpy is probably one of the most interesting things to ever happen between a canon source material and a fandom ever, and how they could affect each other. Because I feel like things like her almost never happen. Specifically in MLPFIM, people have such a deep love for these very obscure, unimportant background characters, who, early on, a lot of them weren't even named. The fans named a lot of these characters themselves. I don't know. I feel like almost no other shows have that kind of deep dedication and love to them that people would be willing to give this much in-depth personalities to this level of character. But it happened for MLP, and I'm glad it did, because I think it added something very special and interesting to the show. I think that would have been probably a good way to end off on the background character segment. At least they're the main 6 background characters, background 6. But we still have Dr. Hooves Time Turner, who I'm just gonna say I think is fine. Early on, he was kind of just a background character, kind of like one of the default designs they had in the backgrounds. He didn't really ever get a character until Slice of Life, where they basically turned him into the Doctor from Doctor Who, almost straight up. And I think that was a kind of really fun, interesting thing to do with him. But, with that being said, I feel like he's been given some of the least stuff to do of any of the background characters. Because Derpy and Vinyl and I don't know if Octavia recurred that much, but I feel like Derpy and Vinyl and Lyra and Bonbon did recur a decent amount after they were introduced as background characters. But I feel like after episode 100, Doctor Who's never really came back that much. I think he's interesting for his position of being kind of like a background. I don't know if he was even a reference at first, but he was almost like Trojan horsed into being a reference in the show to Doctor Who. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting scenario. Next up, we have Rose, I believe your name is, which she's a background character that exists. I think she might have gotten a line in Slice slice of life, and maybe got some like random lines here and there. Because actually, I'm pretty sure she's a part of like the Flower Trio. Are the other members of the Flower Trio on here, or is it just her? I don't know. How every single time, like, there's some disaster rushing its way through Ponyville, like, the flower stand will be destroyed, and then they all faint. It's kind of a fun background gag, but I'm pretty sure the reason she was next to Doctor Who's is because that's kind of a reference to Rose from the same Doctor Who series that was originally airing when all of these started. But honestly, I don't think I really have much to say about her beyond that, though. Trixie. I want to put her in the best tier. You know what? For now, I'm putting Trixie. No, I'm not putting her above Rarity. I'm putting Trixie here for now. We'll see what happens with the top tier. I'm kind of keeping the top tier as a very exclusive club for now. But I feel like some of these characters in the top of Boston tier could potentially be bumped up depending on where some of these characters land. But Trixie, honestly, I thought she was a very entertaining, fun character in her first introductory episode, Ghostbusters, and I think she was also a very interesting antagonist in Magic Duel when she came back. But if that was just the only two appearances she had, she would probably be in this tier, maybe. But after she came back and No Second Appearances, became Starlight's friend, and started becoming a more recurring character as the series went on, I started to absolutely love her, and looked forward to every single appearance she had after that, because she's just such a hilarious, entertaining character beyond that point. She's just this, like, she's still very arrogant and boastful, but to a more playful degree later on, where just, like, I don't know. She still kind of had this interesting rivalry dynamic with Twilight, even though she was definitely fully redeemed as the series went on, but I feel like that just added some sort of special bite to the show as it went on. I feel like Trixie filled out a very interesting dynamic in the wider show in the last couple of seasons that I really, really liked. And plus, I just think Trixie and Starlight's dynamic was really cute. And well developed and interesting, but mostly just really cute, if I'm being honest. Jackpot, I think your name was. I'm pretty sure you were the magician in Lost Pegasus later on. I think you're in the Granny's Gone Wild episode. I remember you being a fairly entertaining character, but if I'm being honest, I don't remember you that well. The main reason I remember you and why you're listed by Trixie in the tier list is because people theorize that you're Trixie's dad. And that's all really I have to say about you. Okay, the cakes. Mrs. Cupcake is a character I do like. I feel like it would be unfair for me to put her under all these different background characters, so I'm at least going to put her right here. She is a very upbeat, loving character, like mother character, who also, I think, one of the most defining features of her is her very strong Minnesotan accent, which I think adds something fun to her character. Even though in the grand scheme of things she's not that important, I think she plays the role in the show she has well, and is a fairly good character in that regard. I think it'd only be fair for me to put Mr. Carrot Cake right next to his wife. Even though the fact that they're both Earth ponies, and their children are a unicorn and a Pegasus, they had Carrot Cake try to explain that in the hospital, but I still think he was hiding something. That's not proven, that's not canon, but I think there was something more going on there that they never told us about. I'm just gonna rate Pound Cake and Pumpkin Cake together, they're fine. I'm gonna rate them like both right here. They're babies. They're baby characters. I don't know, they're there, they exist. Donut Joe! Or Pony Joe, I believe. He is. I think he kind of has like a kind of funny running gag about the series, where he's kind of like one of the most normal ponies in all of Equestria. But I just think that gag at the end of season 2. Was it season 2? I think it was a Camelot Wedding. When Spike. I forget what episode was exactly. When Spike was sitting at the bar and he was demanding more donuts like he was drinking alcohol. I don't know. I think it was kind of funny. So I'll put him here, I guess. Amelia Mild, from along with Donut Joe from Mystery at Friendship Express. Of course, her being a name reference to Julia Child, the old chef. I honestly don't really have that much to say about her. If I'm being honest, I think I'm putting her down like neutral shrug because I'm like, she exists. Gustave Legrand, also appearing in Mystery on Friendship Express, I think is a kind of a little bit more fun, at least from my memory, than Amelia Mild. Kind of being a French chef caricature, but also being a Griffin. He's the second Griffin we've seen in the series, I believe, past Gilda, which I think is fascinating, but this is the second Griffin to appear. That being said, I remember being fairly entertaining, but tertiary characters like this, I don't really think I have the most to say about sometimes. I don't know. I like his design a lot, I'll say that. Miss Cheerilee, the teacher of the young ponies in Ponyville. I like her. From what I remember from the early seasons where she appeared a lot more than the later ones, I feel like she was a fairly fun, very nice but strict teacher character who served her role well, and I also very much like her design. But I think the most interesting thing about Miss Cheerilee is that one photo we saw of her that was like her in the past, where she almost had like the frizzy 80s hair. I think that was the probably my favorite thing in the series with her. Well, there's also her forced relationship with the love potion with Big Mac in Hearts and Hooves Day, I guess, but that was also interesting, but I don't know. That's a lot to unpack there, but I'm just gonna say Cheerilee is a good character. Spoiled Milk, later Spoiled Rich. Bad parent, made Diamond Tiara to grow up to be a much worse character than she would have been otherwise. Just awful. I don't like Spoiled Rich. Yeah. Filthy Rich, on the other hand, surprisingly enough, in the main series, he's actually a fairly decent father and a much better role model to Diamond Tiara than her mother. In Equestria Girls, they treated Filthy Rich in a kind of different way, specifically in um, Legends of Everfree. But that's a spin-off. In the main, that's kind of like different continuities for those characters. They set them account as different entities. But in the main series, he's fine. He's surprisingly a fairly down to earth. I mean, he's still a little stuck up and a little like kind of like caught in his rich ways, but it's not as nearly as bad as Spoiled over here. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon are interesting interesting, because I absolutely adore their appearances in Crusaders: The Lost Mark, which I believe was their both of those characters' last speaking roles in the series. They had 4 more seasons to do something with them after that point, but I feel like they just kind of dropped those characters off the face of the earth after that, interestingly enough. But for the vast majority of their screen time, they are insufferable little bullies who picked on the CMC all the time. Honestly, in their early appearances, they could be mildly amusing and kind of funny sometimes, but they're also jerks. But their last appearances were so good. I guess. You know what? My last appearance kind of like, when they say, like, oh, the thing that you're left thinking about when you watch a movie is the ending. I feel like the ending kind of like does help me a lot with these characters. So I think I'm going to put both of them in fine tier. Yeah, about there. Because I feel like their last appearance was genuinely great, but their first like dozen or so appearances weren't nearly as good. So I think that's fine. Pipsqueak. He's a fun, if simple, little character. He's cute. I like his British accent. He's very small. Yeah. Rumble. I think it's interesting how he got that whole musical number dedicated to how he did not like cutie marks and he didn't like the preordained destiny that came with them. Which I think is a very interesting thing to put into the show because it's a very good question. I just wasn't expecting this kind of character to draw that question. I thought that would be more of a thing. Well, I guess Starlight kind of did that too. I don't know. For his role, Rumble's fine. He was good in his one pivotal appearance, but Featherweight is another cute, fun character. I think I think he was mainly just in the Ponyville Confidential episode where they made the newspapers and he was helping with the printing press there. But if I'm being honest, I don't really remember that many other pivotal appearances of him besides that. I don't really have the most to say about him, so he's cute, so I'll put him like about here probably, I guess. Gabby! Gabby's great. Is she my favorite Griffin? Do I like Gabby more than Gallus? I do. So, I think I honestly will put Gabby, yeah, I think above Ocellus, but below Smolder. She's just a very excitable, fun-loving character who just seems to love life and wants to do as many things as she possibly can. Specifically, also, I think she brings up an interesting question of like, oh, ponies get cutie marks, can griffins get cutie marks? Of course, which we know as the audience is not possible, is not something that could happen, but I think it's very endearing to see her try anyways. I think she added a very interesting dynamic to the show because of that. Zecora, I think, is a very good character. I like Zecora a lot. You know what? As this tier list pans out, I kind of actually want to bump up a couple of these characters. I want to bump up Apple Bloom to about not what here probably because her being down there didn't really feel right. And I think I'm actually gonna put Spike above Gallus actually in retrospect. But Zecora, I really like Zecora, even though I feel like her introduction was interesting. I'm not going to go into it though, but I have a lot of things to say about bridal gossip, but I'm not going to have that included in the conversation I have about Zecora because I feel like that's something I could potentially maybe talk about another day. But ultimately, I think Zecora is a very fun character with a a very interesting gimmick of the way she talks, and as a very good role model for a lot of the younger characters in the series, specifically how she becomes like a mentor to Apple Bloom, especially. I like Sakura. So I'm going to put her. I'm gonna leave her here at the bottom of this tier. Don't want to bump Spike. I'll think about it. Granny Smith. I like Granny Smith. I'll put her like here for now. I feel like a bunch of the episodes of Granny Smith where we hear some of the earlier things that happened in her life, and because she's been around for so long and she's seen so many of these different pivotal events in both Ponyville and the wider Equestria, I feel like a lot of the stories she tells are very interesting because of that, because it gives you a very interesting insight to the history of both the Apple family and the wider Equestria. But Granny Smith's main role in the series as the matriarch of the Apple family I also think is a very fun one. She almost feels like a very typical kind of like grandmother character in cartoon, but I think she's a very entertaining, funny character. Honestly, she might be the funniest member of the Apple family. I don't know. I think she just has a good sense of humor. I don't know. Big Macintosh is genuinely a favorite of mine in the show. I love Big Mac. I honestly think I would rank him at least here for now. Big Mac is a pony of few words and only really talks when he needs to. But I think that actually makes him an interesting character, because when he does talk, in situations where he does talk, which are usually kind of like jokes, where somebody casts a spell on him, or he has more to say sometimes, I think it's actually very interesting. I don't know. He's he's just a very likable, chill, charming character. I like Big Mac's vibe a lot. He also, whenever he does talk though, I feel like it's usually in kind of like, almost like a mentor like motivational speech where he's trying to uplift the others around him. I don't know. Big Mac is a pony of few words, but he says what he needs to and has a very, very big heart. I like him a lot. Babseed, what we gonna do? Her introduction in One Bad Apple was interesting, because she was introduced as a cousin to Apple Bloom, but as soon as Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon showed up, she started to bully them as well, because she herself was bullied back in the place she was from, and she didn't want that to happen to her as well. So it is a very interesting reason of why she did it, but still, one of the only appearances she had in the show, one of the only major appearances she had in the show, was her as a bully. And then, of course, she also did, I believe, appear in Gabby's episode later on, and also in Apple Family Reunion. But ultimately, she learned her lesson at the end of the episode, and I think that made her a fairly well-developed character for the brief amount of screen time she had. But if I'm being honest, I wish she just had more screen time so they were able to develop her even further. But right now, I guess I'll put her like probably here next to the other characters, similar vein to her. But she's fine. I just wish she had more to do. Kind of also like with Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. I feel like after they weren't bullies anymore, almost all three of these characters felt like they were dropped. Which is interesting for Babs, because I feel like they're trying to make her almost into like a fourth member of the CMC for a bit, but that didn't really end up meaning anything. Alright. Okay, let's keep going. Grandpair, I think, has a very interesting role in the story of the one episode he is in, as like the kind of the other adversarial parent to Granny Smith in, was it Pear Butter and Bright Mac, I think? In their kind of like Romeo and Juliet like story. I think he plays an interesting narrative role. And I do like that they were able to get William Shatner to play him as well. Ultimately, I think I'm going to put him here. Even though they only appeared in one episode in a flashback sequence, I think Pear Butter and Bright Mac are both great characters for how short their screen time was. So I think I'm going to put Pear Butter there, and I'm going to put Bright Mac here. Whenever I think about the perfect pair, it almost makes me want to cry just because how sweet and how melancholic the episode is. In my head, like a catchy song is a great song as well. Alright, next up we got Apple Strudel. Also, don't ask me why I know all these character names. Shut up. He's a fun, like, one-off background gag, but ultimately he's not a very important character from what I remember. He's a fun design. Why is Grandpair on here twice? Get to the bottom. Go away. Apple Rose. I only remember her from Granny's Gone Wild. When Granny Smith, her, and the others went to Las Pegasus with the Rainbow Dash, and that was kind of a fun episode. But honestly, I don't really think I have that much to say about her, so I'll just put her there. Auntie Applesauce, I think, appeared a little more than Apple Rose, but honestly, I think she also appeared in Apple Fan Reunion, if I remember correctly. But if I'm being honest, I don't think she's the most interesting character either from her lack of appearances, but I still think I'd put her above Apple Rose at the very least. Goldie Delicious, though, appeared in a lot more episodes than they did, and I think is actually a pretty good character. As, like, almost like one of the more important other members of the Apple family. I don't know, I think she's a pretty funny character, and I like all of her cats. I think it's a very funny running gag. Ultimately, though, I don't think I have a lot to say about her, but she is a fun character. So I think I'll put her at least here. Hasty Turnip Truck is another kind of like, almost like background gag character, kind of like Apple Strudel, but I think he's a little more dynamic and does a little more than he does. So, interesting design. I don't know. Not really the most dynamic character, though. Brayburn. With how early this character was introduced, I thought he was going to do a lot more in the series as a whole. And I think he did have a fun enough introduction. Okay, actually, I think my music actually played through, so I think I'm going to have to restart this. There we go. Music's back on. Alright. Brayburn, I think, is a fun character, but the episode he was introduced in was also a very Over a Barrel was also a very interesting one, so I will not go in depth in the conversation here, just like I said with Zecora. Not the conversation for this video. I will put him here. He's a kind of fun character when he's on screen. I think I want to bump Sandbar up to this tier, actually. Also, I'm just going to be randomly adjusting as I go, too, because that's just how I do with these things. I think Sandbar goes above Brayburn. Yeah, that's fine. Chief Thunderhooves and Little Strongheart are interesting ones because of the position they have in the story, kind of similar to Zecora. But I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to put Chief Thunderhooves right here. I do like Little Strongheart as a character. Everything considered, so I think I'm gonna put her right here and move on. Sheriff Silverstar. Yeah, it was a fun design, but if I'm being honest, I don't really remember anything he really did, even though I know he has a little bit more to do in the episodes he was in, which were Over a Barrel, and I believe also Appaloosa's Most Wanted. So I'll put you right here, I guess. Yeah. Countess Coloratura, aka Ra-Ra. She also is only a one-shot character, but honestly, might be one of my favorite one-shot characters in the entire show. Ra-Ra is a fantastic character, and her arc in the episode is fantastic. From reconnecting with her roots and trying to not let fame consume her. And her song, I Am Just a Pony, is absolutely wonderful. It sends chills down my spine every single time I listen to it. It's just a fantastic song, and she's a fantastic character. I kind of want to bump up Spike. Yeah, I want to bump up Spike and also Pear Butter up a little bit. Because I think Pear Butter is also one of the show's best one-shot characters. I don't think lack of appearances should diminish one really strong appearance either, so I'm going to put her there. Sven-Gallop, go down here. That's where you deserve to be. Flim and Flam are wonderful villains. I love them. They're so entertaining. Their songs are always so catchy and so good. They're such fun characters. I am putting Flim and Flam right here. I think Flim deserves to be higher because he usually does more of the talking. But I like Flam's voice more, and he's like more of the baritone, and I think his mustache is also a fun design element. But I'm gonna put them in order because Flim does more of the talking among the two of them, anyways. And plus, they're about the same character anyways in their duo, so it doesn't really matter that much where I put which one. Gladmane is a fun one-shot villain who I will put here. Kind of having this Elvis impersonator villain run a casino is a very fun idea for a character, and I think they execute it well. But I really don't think I have that much to say about him, though. I also think Troublestooth is a fun character. A very simple character, but I think he had a very interesting arc. I actually like Appaloosa's Most Wanted as an episode, even though I know a lot of other people don't, or think it's like badly handled or boring or whatever. But I actually like it, and I actually do like Troublestooth as a character, so I think I'm going to put him here. He's a very rootable character. That's what I'm gonna say. Featherbangs is kind of a funny, like, pretty boy, like, boy band, Justin Bieber parody-esque kind of character. He's not really likable, though, but he is kind of funny, so I'm gonna put him there. Igneous Rock Pie. Pinkie Pie's father never really gets that much to say or do in the series, if I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, I think that's giving him a little too much credit. Igneous Rock and Cloudy Quartz are just kind of there, if I'm being honest. Just kind of whenever they're at the rock farm, or whenever we have a flashback to the rock farm in Pinkie's past, I feel like they're just kind of there. I don't know. I do think it's kind of interesting that Pinkie has kind of like this parallel of almost like an Amish upbringing, though. I don't know. Limestone Pie is a fun character. She's the more irritable, defensive of the Pie sisters, but I think she's a very fun character. I think she's funny. Very much of almost like a farmer tomboy girl. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, but it makes sense actually. I don't know. I'll put her like here. Marble is almost like the Fluttershy equivalent of the Pie family, interestingly enough. And I love Fluttershy. I don't love her as much as Fluttershy, but I think I will put her like fairly high actually. I think she's a fun character. I'll put her like there. Also, I think the whole thing with Marble and Big Mac was a fascinating choice. If you know, you know. But I'll leave it at that. Maud is great. Maud is one of my favorite characters on the show that's not a member of the main six, probably. Legitimately, at least there. She seems very unemotive at first, but that's just because I believe Maud is almost a very autistic coded character, so I can kind of relate to her in that aspect. And once you get to know her, she actually does like things and she does feel things. She just doesn't really show it that much physically. But Pinkie Pie is able to tell these things, and I think as the series goes on, the audience is able to tell this too as she gets more screen time. Also, Maud Pie is absolutely hilarious. Genuinely one of the funniest characters in the entire show. Her dry humor kills me later on, especially on like the later appearances she has. She is great. I love Maud Pie. Mudbriar is a very similar character to Maud Pie, but a lot of people don't like him as much. Even though he is also kind of like within the realm of that kind of autistic representation. Even though I do get when people have like the parallel of Sheldon Cooper to Mudbriar, which I don't think is unwarranted, but I will say I do think Mudbriar is a fairly fun character, and I do think it's probably a little too much hate for what he is. Even though I don't love him, I do like him as a character, so I'll put him there. Still so many characters to go. Alright, Cheese Sandwich is a great character as well. Pinky's Pride is one of the best episodes of the entire show. I love that he's voiced by Weird Al Yankovic. He's such an entertaining, fun character. Great songs, absolutely hilarious. Love the goof off. Love the fact that he parodied the Smile song. The fact that he got together with Pinky at the end of the series and Weird Al still references it to this day, I think is also very funny. Despite his brief appearances, I think Cheese Sandwich has made a great impact on the series. I'm genuinely putting him like here. He's such an entertaining character. I mean, it makes sense. He's voiced by Weird Al. It'd almost be weird if he wasn't this high because of that fact. Cranky Doodle Donkey. I think feeling no A Friend Indeed was an interesting episode. Of course, it had the Smile song, which might just be my favorite song in the entire series. But Cranky Doodle Donkey, I think, ultimately was an interesting character who ultimately afterwards had a fun dynamic with Pinky, even though he didn't really get as many appearances later on. I think they still did remember him and did bring him back from time to time, so I do think he's still a fairly fun character. Matilda is also a good character. I think would probably. I don't think I like Matilda as much as Cranky because Cranky is the more focused of the two characters. But I do think I will put her. Actually, maybe I will actually put her next to Cranky. I don't know. She's just a very sweet, kind old character. I don't know. And I think Cranky and Matilda make a very cute couple, and I think their wedding during Slice of Life was a very fun part of their characters as well. Stephen Magnet is another very interesting character. Not a very important character in the grand scheme of things, because I believe he only really appeared in the second episode and the 100th episode. But I do think ultimately he did make the impression as a memorable character despite his brief screen time. So I will say, but I do need to consider his brief screen time as well. Probably about... yeah, here. Saffron Masala. Spice Up Your Life is a very good episode. The song in that episode's great. I think she's a very fun character. Like her trying to repopularize her restaurant and trying to go between what Pinky's telling her and what Rarity's telling her and trying to decide between those two paths. I don't know. I think she's probably also one of the better one-shot characters in the show. And I honestly do think I like her a little more than Brayburn, so I think I'm going to put her about there. Coriander Cumin. Of course, the father of Saffron, and then was introduced in the very same episode. Also an interesting character who I think had the other side of the dynamic of like what to do with the restaurant. Not as memorable as Saffron to me, but still got the job done narratively. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'd put him in the tier. I might actually put him down to the fine tier. Probably, honestly, about here, maybe. Yeah, that's about good. He's a fine character. I think Saffron was the funner of the two characters, if I'm being honest. I don't think I forgot a single character's name yet. Interesting. Windy Whistles. Rainbow's parents are interesting. They're very loving, but also very loud with their love, which is not a bad thing, but in the episode, from what I remember, I don't know. I think they were fine. I think I'm going to put both of them, both Windy Whistles and Bo Hothoof, about here. Daring Do is also a fun character, / aka Yearling. I think the fact that the book series that she wrote ended up being actual accounts of her adventures later on was a very interesting choice that I remember a lot of people not liking at the time, but I think it was a fun enough idea that kind of added another like action adventurous aspect to the show. Even though she's kind of just like an Indiana Jones parallel, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. I think she's a fun character. I would say Daring Do I would put about here, I think. Still so many characters to go. Okay, Aohizoto has a very dynamic, fun, unique design, but honestly at the end of the day is kind of a basic villain. And it was interesting that he ultimately also ended up being one of the characters who got redeemed. There, I guess, that's fine. That's fine ranking for Aohizoto. Quibblepants is a very fun character. Patton Oswalt does a great job voicing this character. I think I'm going to put him like here. Kind of like being like kind of very overly critical fan in comparison to Rainbow Dash's more like optimistic, glass half full kind of fan of Daring Do she was. Quibble was a lot more like of the critical fans you'd see almost like on the modern day internet. But I think that actually makes a very interesting, fun dynamic between the characters in series. I don't know, I think he's a very fun character. I do not remember the names of Quibble Pants' ex-wife and daughter. Oh, what were they called? I'll look this up real quick. Because I need to continue my streak of knowing all the characters' names. Clear Sky and Wind Sprint. I did not remember that. From what I remember, they're both good characters who had that interesting kind of dynamic with the divorced parents taking care of the daughter. I think that was a very bold, well executed choice on the staff's part. And I think they're both served their dynamic in the story well because of that. Even though ultimately, I'm going to put both of them probably about here because I think that's where about they deserve. I remember them being handled well, but of course, I think factoring in since I didn't even remember what they were named tells you how much I think about them, and I think that actually has a dynamic on a favorite characters list I should consider as well. Alright, Lightning Dust. An interesting adversary to Rainbow Dash, which I think they probably could have utilized more than just Wonderbolts Academy and the Washouts. But I still think she's a fairly fun antagonistic character regardless. And that's almost like the antithetical to Rainbow Dash because I think she was kind of like almost how Rainbow Dash was early on in the series, and it was kind of like a parallel mirror to Rainbow Dash in the past to the present, which I think is an interesting dynamic. But I do think they could have probably utilized her a little more than they did, but I think that's about a fine ranking for Lightning Dust. Okay, now we go into the Wonderbolts. Spitfire. I think she's a good character, but honestly, I feel like the Wonderbolts as a whole are almost one of the most underutilized aspects of the show. Specifically, not when it comes to Rainbow Dash's involvement with them, but more when it comes to the dynamics of the characters within the Wonderbolts themselves. Captain Spitfire, I think, is a fun character, but also is a little all over the place, and it almost feels like they don't know exactly what they want to do with her. But I do like her well enough, so I'll just put her there. Soren. I also do like to a degree, but honestly, I don't think is as interesting as some of these other characters. But I think he does have some interesting and funny moments here and there, so I think I'm willing to put him about here. Yeah. Thunderlane. I just remember he's mostly the older brother of Rumble, and also had an interesting dynamic in Hurricane Fluttershy with the rest of the Ponyville Flyers. If I'm being honest, I think I might put him down here. He's fine. How about right next to his brother? That fits, I think. Oh my gosh. I don't even remember what your names are. Random other Wonderbolts. Who are you? Who are both of you? I don't remember who you are. I know there's a decent cast of recurring Wonderbolts, but the main ones I remember, besides Rainbow Dash, who became one later, are Spitfire, Soren, and Thunderlane. The other Wonderbolts, I don't remember. I don't remember as much. Oh, now into some of the other Griffins. Gilda, I think, was a kind of interesting antagonist. I think kind of like an interesting role in the episode she was introduced, and also I think she had an interesting redemption arc in her reintroduction in Lost Treasure of Rivenstone. But I do think she should have appeared in more than the 2 episodes she did, because I think she would have had a more interesting dynamic with Rainbow Dash and the rest of the show. Interestingly enough, I feel like I said a lot of very similar things about Lightning Dust. But I do think Gilda's a little bit more interesting than Lightning Dust is. because she's like one of the. I think she might be the earliest episodic antagonist in the entire show, and I think I gotta give her something for that. So there we go. Oh, still so many characters left. Alright, let's get through this. Grandpa Gruff, I think, is also a fun character and had a fun dynamic with Gallus and also in Griffinstone later on. He's kind of like a typical old man character, but I think he gets the job done in that role, and I think he's a fairly entertaining character in that role. So I'll put him like. Eh, he's a little bit more important than these characters, so I think I'll put him like here probably. Wind Rider. I remember he was like the antagonist in Rarity Investigates, but if I'm being blatantly honest, I remember almost nothing about him. I'm gonna put him above some of these other characters in Neutral that I don't even remember if they spoke or not. If I'm being blatantly honest, I'll put him at least there just because of that. Mr. and Mrs. Shy. You could very much tell Fluttershy took after her parents and her personality. But if I'm being honest, I think they probably could have done a little bit more with these characters because I honestly think they're just fine. Honestly, I think they did more with Rainbow Dash's parents than Fluttershy's parents. I think I'm going to put them. Actually, I'm not sure if I want to put them above Thunderlane and Rumble. Actually, I'm going to put them below. Also, not below Pipsqueak either, actually. Actually, I might put Pipsqueak above them too. No, because of Blanks Forever episode. But Mr. and Mrs. Shy, I think I'd put like about. No, Grandpair is more interesting too, so I think I put them about there actually. Zephyr Breeze. What do I say about Zephyr Breeze? Fluttershy's brother, who's the aspiring artist who refused to get a job for the longest time because he thought himself better than that, and kind of liked to have people wait on him hand and foot, and also flirted with Rainbow Dash all the time, which felt kind of pushy in his regard, I think. But ultimately, I think he had a great song, and also I do really get the moral of the episode. I think it had a good moral. I do think Flutter Brother is a very good episode, but Flutter Breeze himself. What did I say? Who's Flutter Breeze? Zephyr Breeze. I mixed him up with Fluttershy for a second. Zephyr Breeze. I think his character is almost more of an Aesop than a likable character, but I think I will put him at least up here with kind of similarly jerkish characters who, well, kind of redeemed themselves. I think he's actually a little more interesting than Babs is, actually. I don't know. I think Zephyr can be kind of a funny, entertaining character, but at the same time he's kind of an asshole. But I think that kind of gives him an interesting dynamic. Iron Will, I think, is a fun character. I think I like him a lot. He's not really even an antagonist that much. At first, he was just like an honest businessman who just had a very interesting way about going about his course to toughen up ponies and make them more assertive. Once Upon a Zeppelin was different. He was a little bit more scummy there, but I wouldn't say straight up villainous there either. I think his mannerisms and way of speaking is very funny and very entertaining and over the top, almost like that Randy Savage style of like enunciation, and almost made him this like kind of almost like infomercial like salesman kind of character. I don't know, I think he's a very fun design, I think he has a very fun personality, I think he had very fun dynamics with other characters in the show as well. I like Iron Will. I think he's a fun character. Legitimately, like here. Honestly. No, here. Iroh's a fun character. Discord! Boom. Right into the top 3. Discord is my favorite villain in MLP. Also, after his redemption, he still remained one of my favorite characters in the entire show. I think he was a fantastic villain, a very interesting adversary to both Celestia Luna and the main 6. And also, after he came back and Keep Calm and Flutter On, when Fluttershy became friends with him and led to his redemption, which felt slow but earned. But all the while throughout the entire show, whether it was when he started out as a villain or slowly became into a redeemed ally to the main 6, I think Discord is probably the most entertaining character in the entire show. When he appears on screen, he demands your attention because he pulls all the screen presence in the show towards himself. He's just absolutely hilarious. I love his character design. I love the animation they have of him. I love the creativity and his jokes and the visual gags and the writing. I love his story arc. I love his character. I love his jokes. I love his personality. I adore Discord. One of my favorite characters in the entire show. I could talk about him all day. Anyway, moving on. Tree Hugger. I believe she was a one-shot. She's a fun character, almost like this kind of like hippie kind of character who a lot of people have a certain fan theory for, associated with a certain recreational planet, I will say, which I think is also amusing. Despite her brief appearance, I think she's a fun character, and I honestly think I'll put her, like, honestly, probably, like, right here. I think she's a fun character. Nothing can stop the smooze. It's a cute blob. Discord brings it to us as +1 to the party. Not much to say about it. About there, probably. Seabreeze is a fine character. I think he has a fun accent. And I think he has actually an interesting dynamic in the show with Fluttershy as well, because of kind of like the tough love Fluttershy had to give the Breezies within that episode. But ultimately, as characters themselves, I mean, it's not the Breezies in the spot, it's Seabreeze. He's fine. Gets the job done. Narratively, I guess. Not much else to say. Who are these characters? I remember their appearances. Like this, like what almost looks like Simon Cowell. I remember his that's his very hyperactive daughter, and they were like throwing a. No, weren't they from Philly Vanilli? And like the Ponytones went to her birthday party or something. I don't know. I shouldn't be talking this much about characters I barely remember. I remember her being kind of fun. So I guess I'll bump her up. Even though I don't remember her name, I'll just put her here because I remember her being a somewhat entertaining character. But you, I don't even remember how you acted at all. Yeah, whatever. Hondo Flanks and Cookie Crumbles. Honestly, barely even characters. I mean, their one appearance was fine. I think the dichotomy between Rarity and Sweetie Belle and their parents is interesting because they're almost like nothing alike. But after their first appearance, I genuinely don't remember if they ever appeared again after that. I don't know. If they appeared more, I would have more to say about them, but as it is, I don't know. The Diamond Dogs, Spot, Rover, and Fido. Don't ask me where I remember the names. They are fine antagonists. They were a good foil for Rarity and Spike in the Dog and Pony show. They didn't really utilize him that much later in the show. I think they utilized the Diamond Dog race a little bit more in the MLP comics, but I don't remember them doing that much with them in the show beyond the first episode. And honestly, I thought they're just like fine episodic antagonists. That's about it. Oh, now for the celebrities. Hoity Toity, of course, the fashion connoisseur who was overlooking Rarity's fashion show in Suited for Success. Fine. Fairly entertaining, kind of like fancy persona, but honestly, I don't really have that much to say about him. Photo Finish, I think, is a lot more dynamic, interesting character than Hoity Toity is. I think she's a fun character despite her brief appearances. Like, she definitely made a splash when she first appeared. Almost like with her like accent and her like mannerisms and how like I don't know. She was a very entertaining character despite her brief appearances, so I'd put her about here probably. Splitting up Cranky and Matilda, sorry. Fancy Pants, from what I remember, he used one of the upper crust in Canterlot. I don't really remember that much about him. I think I was fine, I guess. I'll put him here. I don't know. Sapphire Shores is a fun character. I think she actually, her motivational talks to Rarity are actually kind of interesting. I think she's a very, of the celebrity characters in the series, I think she's one of the more recurrent ones, and I think she does have an interesting and fun character dynamic with Rarity, as I said. So, I think I put her about there. I'll write about Photo Finish. Sassy Saddles is an interesting character and has like kind of a more doesn't mind industrializing Rarity's shops as long as they are able to make more money, but that's not really Rarity's dynamic in the way she wants to sell things. I don't think the way she's doing things is exactly bad per se, it's just not right for Rarity, and I think that makes her an interesting foil to Rarity in the episode Camelot Boutique. Because of that, I don't know. A little more dynamic from some of these characters. Honestly, I think I always do it a little above that. And the Diamond Dogs. Right there. Well, no, let's see above the Diamond Dogs. Okay, whatever. Let me get back to the list. Coco Pommel. I think she's a very fun character, and I think her arc in the episode she was introduced, Rarity Takes Manhattan was interesting because of the way she was working under Surrey Polomare's thumb and learned to get out of that situation and become more of her own fashion designer separate than her, and then later worked under Rarity. I think she's a very fun character. Also kind of feels like one of the Fluttershy coded characters in the show as well, aside from like Marble and Ocellus. Interesting how you can kind of like point out different character patterns LP has just by like the kind of archetypes they deal with. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad characters by following a similar archetype. I just think it's something interesting to acknowledge. I think Coco is a very fun, cute character, so I'll put her about. Honestly, about here. No. Here, probably, yeah. I like Coco. Suri's an asshole. Honestly, arranging this bottom tier, I'm gonna put actually Spoiled at the bottom, below Svengali, and Suri at the top. I guess Suri's a good antagonist, but I remember her being just kind of a jerk. I think this was the pony that Rarity bought the shop from. I think it was in Saddle Row Review. And this was his daughter. Honestly, in this character, I'm going to kind of put in this neutral. I remember him a little bit better than this character in the Wonderbolts here. I'm going to put him about there, maybe. The daughter, I remember being a fairly fun character. With all the different, like, fixes you wanted to give to the shop that the father is forcing to implement. I don't know, I think she was kind of a fun character. She almost reminded me of Mabel from Gravity Falls in a way, oddly enough. I don't remember her name, though, or her father's name. I'm going to put her here. I don't know. Not too much to say. Trenderhoof. There, whatever. Does the organization of this low of a tier even matter that much? Leave it there. Who cares? Snapshitter and Mean All Good, or Scootaloo's parents, who just were out on adventures this entire time and didn't have time to take care of their daughter for no good reason? I don't hate them or anything, but that definitely wasn't a good move on their parts. So I think I'm going to put them about, I don't know, here at least, I don't know. Aunt Lofty and Aunt Holiday. Scootaloo's actual parents, as far as I'm concerned, because they actually took care of her and are around to see her, will go much higher. I'm gonna put them at least. I mean, they only had one appearance, so there's only so high I could put them, but I'm gonna put them right here. Okay, Twilight Velvet and Nightlight, Twilight Sparkle's parents. I'm going to put. They're fun. I think specifically their appearances in Once Upon a Zeppelin and their dynamic with the rest of the family there is very fun. But at the end of the day, they're still relatively simple characters, the both of them. So I think I'm going to put them like here, probably. Shining Armor, Twilight's brother, Twilight's BBBFF. I will put. I think he's a good character. I don't think he's the most interesting character in the entire series, but I do think Shining is a good character and a good brother to Twilight. But I don't really think I have that much to say about him, so I think I'll put him about there. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna get another drink. Alright, almost done. Moon Dancer. Amending Fences is one of the best episodes of the entire show, and Moon Dancer is a genuinely fantastic. I mean, she's not. Is she a one-shot character? Because I think she might have also. No. She was mentioned in the first episode, but I don't think she appeared in the group shot with the other friends that had Canterlot. For being a one-shot character, she is great. Honestly, probably above a couple of the other one-shot characters I have, so I think I'll put her like right there. story in Amending Fences is absolutely amazing. Like, the way, like, Twilight neglected her friends beforehand, that Van went to make friends in Ponyville and became the Princess of Friendship, but then forgot about the fact that she had friends back in Canterlot before she left, and the way she tried to mend that situation and the reactions that Moondancer had, I don't know. The entire situation is deeply fascinating, and I absolutely love that episode and the way it's written. It's genuinely one of the most emotional episodes of the entire series to me. It's fantastic, and Moondance is a fantastic character. Alright. Philomena the Phoenix. Honestly, fine. From what memory serves, I don't remember A Bird in the Hoof being one of my favorite episodes of the show, and I think the gags with them is kind of like fine. I remember the Benny Hills chase music being in that episode. I honestly think I like his Phoenix design a lot better than this. Even though this is probably the more inventive design for a Phoenix, if I'm being honest. Why am I saying this much about him? I'm gonna move on. Miss Harshwinny is fine as kind of like the character who was like, from what I remember, she was one of the characters who was kind of like helping set up the Equestria games. That whole entire story arc, I think, was kind of interesting. I don't know, I don't think I really have that much to say about her, though. I'm just gonna put her here. And then the character she was confused with, Miss Peachbottom, was a kind of fun character, but also doesn't really appear as much. She's a funner character, more entertaining character than Harshwinny. But of course, she was the character they confused for her. Games Ponies Play was an interesting episode. I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about either one of those characters, though. Sugar Belle! Big Mac's wife. I like her. I don't know, she's a simple, likable character. But honestly, she's cute with Big Mac, but I don't really think I have that much else to say about her. Of course, she was also one of the characters from Starlight's Village, early on in the Cutie map. I don't know, I don't think I really have that much to say about her, though. I think I'll put her about here, probably. Okay, the other characters from the Cutie map that we met. Night Glider, Party Favor, and Double Diamond. I'm just going to be honest and say they are all fine. I'm going to line them up all pretty close to each other on this chart. I think, honestly, right. Right here. About here. Night Glider, Party Favor above her, and then Double Diamond below her. There we go. I don't really have that much to say about the characters. I just remember they had fairly interesting personalities, but they never really... The show never really paid that much attention to them after the Cutie map, so I'm not sure if I have that much to say about them either. Sugar Belle is the one that definitely appeared the most of those four. Sunburst is a fun character. I'm going to put him fairly high in the yay tier. I think he's a fun character, but I don't think he's going above Quibble Pants for me, so I think I'm going to put him right there. Thorax is another good character, of course, the first redeemed changeling, who proved changelings to be better than Chrysalis and what others thought of them. And of course, it was Spike who helped him come out of his shell and help him become better and find his place in the world, and eventually become the new leader of the changelings after Chrysalis was demoted. I like him. That being said, I think I'll put him about here. Yeah, that's fine. Pharynx, Thorax's brother. From his one appearance, I remember, I think he was like the more warmongering, one of the older mindsets for changelings, and he had to kind of be convinced past his previous mindset, which I think was kind of an interesting plot for the episode. That being said, I don't remember him that. I mean, I remember his name, so that's not something. I'm gonna put him right here. I don't know. I don't remember this changeling. Who are you? I don't remember this changeling. Put you above him because you're a changeling. You're just a pony with a beard. I don't know. I don't remember you. Sludge. Spike's fake father figure had a song for some reason. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Not a character I absolutely despise, but not one I particularly care for either. Garble, on the other hand, started as kind of like a one-dimensional bully character and kind of stuck with that throughout the entirety of his appearances, more or less, until he was randomly redeemed in the final season. I feel like Garble might be the most rushed redemption of any character in the series, from what I remember. I don't know. Garble. I guess it's kind of a similar situation to Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, but honestly, I'm probably putting him like. I guess he could be occasionally funny here and there, but honestly, I'm putting Garble probably like here. I don't absolutely despise him. I think he can be humorous here and there, but whatever. Ember's a fun character. I don't think I'll put her up in this tier because even though I do think she's a fun character, and I think an interesting character choice for the ruler of the dragons, ultimately she didn't appear that often, so I don't think I really have that much to say about her compared to some others. But I do like her, and I do think she was a good choice for the role, and I do really like her design a lot, and her dynamic with Spike, so I think I'm going to put her there. Okay, now we get to the princesses. I feel like these characters should have been like way higher on the list, like next to like the main six and the CMC and Spike up there. But I guess here they are now. All right, we finally have Princess Celestia, who, despite her kind of like teaching through lessons and sending her students on missions to learn like that, I think it's a very interesting way to teach. But that kind of also made it to where her appearances in the early seasons were very sparse and very brief. As the series went on, I feel like she got more dynamic, interesting appearances, which is why I will put Celestia in the awesome tier. Because I think later on, especially in the final couple of seasons, they feel like they finally started doing a lot more things with her. In episodes like Celestial Advice and Horseplay, and I think it was between Dark and Dawn in the final season when her and Luna went on a vacation. I think Celestia is a great character, but not one of my absolute favorites on the show either. I think, if I'm being honest, I'll probably put her. I think they'll put her above Smolder, but below Sweetie Belle right there for now. That being said, I think Luna is the much more dynamic, interesting character than Celestia. Starting out as Nightmare Moon and slowly being reformed. No, not slowly being reformed. Her reformation was actually pretty quick in the series in the grand scheme of things because it was the first two-parter. But I think her redemption and her eventually like forgiving herself and rejoining the royalty of Equestria was a very interesting arc. Being a character with such a troubled past and such a regret for her past actions that she really, really wanted to get over, even though over time in New Princess's Dream of Magic sheep. She was really the only one at that point who was really still talking about Nightmare Moon and her past actions, and she was still dwelling on it because she never wanted to be that evil again. Which I think does make her a very interesting character. Also, I just adore Luna's design. Love her personality. She seems like kind of like she should be like a more dark, brooding character because of her design, but she is actually a very entertaining, fun-loving character as well. She's just after being trapped sent to the moon for 1,000 years, she's very disconnected from the other ponies around her, and she has to reacclimate to pony society because of that. I don't know. Luna's a great character. I'm going to legitimately. Yeah, that high. And yes, above Applejack. I love Applejack, but Luna is just. I feel like Luna is one of the reasons why so many people became so enamored with the show early on. Just her dynamic with Celestia and kind of like the tragic story that played out because of that just deeply resonated with a lot of people. So I think I get why Luna is a lot of people's favorite character in the entire show. She's not my favorite character in the entire show, but she's definitely a great one. Princess Cadance. I do like Princess Cadance, but overall I do think she was ultimately underutilized as a character. I will probably put her a little higher than her husband Shining Armor, because I do think she's a little more dynamic and interesting than he is. I will go. Probably about this far with Cadance. I like her. Her introduction in A Canterlot Wedding was fantastic. How she had to prove she was herself, and then go stop Queen Chrysalis from marrying Shining so she could be with him instead. And the way she reaffirmed their love in that giant explosion that sent all the changelings away. It was a very dynamic, fun episode appearance of her, and I think it was actually one of the more memorable character first appearances in the entire show. Also, people love Chrysalis's Half of This Day aria as like this great, grandiose villain song, but Cadance's Half of This Day aria herself is also very great, and it shows how much of a deeply loving, thoughtful character she is. I don't know. I really like Cadance. I just wish the show did more with her, because after a while, I feel like she was like kind of demoted in role, and then she became a mother, and then after that, I feel like that kind of became more of her character. I don't know. I really feel like her and Shining should have had more to do in the show, but you know, what can you do? Blue Blood. To Rarity, he was a pretty horse face until he revealed himself to be a jackass. Barely appeared. Actually, after a certain point, I don't think he was even really alluded to anymore. I think in the latter half of the show, they just kind of completely forgot about him. I remember when he appeared in like this AU MLP comic where he was a lot more pivotal to the plot, and I was like, when he appeared in that comic when I was reading it, I was just like, why are you here? I don't know. Why are the movie characters split up? I don't know. No, Queen Novo of the Hippogriffs. Honestly, I really like her design, and I think she was kind of interesting based on her brief appearances in the movie. But as I said, her appearances in the movie were very brief, so I think I could only really put her like here. Princess Skystar was definitely a character that appeared a lot more in the movie than Novo, so I think I'm gonna put her higher. And also, One Small Thing is a fantastic song, something that gives her some credit too. Also, the fact that she kind of plays into that Pinkie Pie archetype as well does give her some points too. So, ultimately, I think I'm going to put her like here. I don't know. I feel like Silver Stream Does her character a lot more interestingly because it kind of fleshes her out, the kind of character out more. Because Skystar was only to the movie and Silverstream was in the show, so I think, yeah, I think in the movie they realized Skystar was a fun character, but they couldn't really bring her over to the show because of the celebrity voice actress, so they kind of just like made a new character that's kind of the same character, honestly. Rutherford is fine. He's kind of funny, but also kind of frustrating. The Yaks are very interestingly handled species in MLP. Um. Honestly, I think I'll put him like here because I think he actually is a little more interesting than some of these other characters. So I think I'm gonna put him like right there. Nightmare Moon. Honestly, Luna spent a lot more time as Luna than Nightmare Moon, to the point where honestly, at some points, I almost forgot she was a villain. Which is kind of interesting with Luna's story in Do Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep, actually. But Nightmare Moon, I think she's a great villain, but I recently rewatched Friendship is Magic Parts 1 and 2, and she actually ultimately didn't really appear in those episodes for that long. I mean, of course, she came back in like the alternate reality sequences and the Cutie Remark, and also in the beginning of Princess Twilight Sparkle. So she did spend a little bit more time seeing Nightmare Moon here and there. But ultimately, her lack of screen time, I think, kind of hurts her. I mean, I love Luna, but I'm not putting Nightmare Moon next to Luna. I will put her like here, probably. Great villain for the brief appearances she had. Queen Chrysalis is a better villain than Nightmare Moon. Because, of course, she was a villain throughout the entire series. Because I feel like you kind of split Luna up into Luna and Nightmare Moon. Queen Chrysalis is just Queen Chrysalis. Genuinely one of the best villains in the entire show. As I was saying earlier, Camelot Wedding is a fantastic two-parter. Her part of Vistiaria is great. And later on, when she teamed up with Tirek and Cozy Glow, I think they had a very interesting dynamic in Frenemies and up to like the final season and like to the finale. I don't know. Chrysalis is just a great villain. I honestly think I would. When I put her to this high, though, I think I'd put her. No, I think I'd put her below Maud. Great villain, but these more heroic characters have a lot more appearances. And Discord, who also spent a lot more of the series heroic than he did as a villain. Alright. Do I need to restart the music again? Alright, there we go. Hopefully that's the last time I'll have to do this, because I think I'll wrap up this tier list actually pretty soon, because we're on the last row now, yay! Alright. Alright, let's go. King Sombra. I think he served his purpose fine in the Crystal Empire, more being like an evil presence than anything else, because he didn't really talk at all in that episode. Well, besides saying crystals here and there. And then when he came back in the beginning and the end of season 9, he actually talked. Which I actually really liked the voice they gave him. I found it fit his character a lot. But, that being said, he felt like almost a completely different character in that episode because he actually talked. I don't know. A very demanding evil presence. Love his design. But ultimately, not one of my favorite villains in the series. But I think I will put him like here. Honestly. Good villain, good character, but not one of my favorites. Honestly, if we're counting the comics, I don't think I'm really including the comics much here. He had a much more interesting storyline and backstory in the comics than he ever got in the show proper. But we're not talking about the comics, we're talking about the show. Lord Tirek is a great villain. Genuinely love this character. He's just such a big. I honestly think up to the point he was introduced, he was the biggest threat Equestria's seen so far. Like him stealing all the magic of all the different ponies, and just like, I know everybody brings it up, but that DBZ style fight he has against Twilight Sparkle at the end of the episode is fantastic. Genuinely one of the most well-animated sequences in the entire show. Such a maniacal villain, but he's so fun. He's just like such a fun villain to watch. And also his dynamic with Chrysalis and Cozy in the final season is also very entertaining. I'm not sure if I'd say as good as Chrysalis, but I will put him probably about... honestly, probably about here. No, above Cheese, actually, yeah. Turk's a great villain. Storm King... fine, I guess. He serves his purpose as a villain in the movie, but kind of feels like a weaker combination of Discord and T-Rex. I think I'm almost already about out of things to say about him, if I'm being honest. Cool design, not really unique or memorable though. Because the real interesting antagonist of the movie was Tempest Shadow, aka Fizzlepop Berry Twist. Who I think is probably one of the... is she my favorite one-shot character in the show? The other highest one I have so far for one-shot characters is... I don't think Moondance was a one-shot, I think that was actually Rara. Tempest is a great character. Here, Open Up Your Eyes is a fantastic villain song. Her backstory was well done. Her arc of the movie was fantastic. The inevitable betrayal of the Storm King and her redemption at the end of the movie I also liked. I don't know. I think she really pulled the MLP movie together and is one of the reasons why I love it. I mean, I love it because I love MLP. I also love the songs of the movie, but Tempest was easily the best new character introduced in that movie, and I really wish we could have seen more of her beyond it, besides just like cameo appearances. Rubber. He sure exists. He likes food. He was Storm King's little villain sidekick. I don't know. Cozy Glow. I honestly think a lot of people have very differing opinions on Cozy Glow, but I honestly think she was a really good villain. That being said, I don't think I'd actually put her above any of the characters in this tier. I think I'll put her at the bottom of this tier for now. I don't know, having this small, unassuming child be the arc villain of the season, I think was actually a very bold idea. It's debatable whether it turned out the best in the season it was implemented in, but I do think she's a very fun concept for a character. Honestly, kind of reminds me of Baby Doll from Batman the Animated Series and the kind of dynamic. I mean, it's not exactly the same as that, but I don't know, it's just kind of a similar... maybe Darla Dimple from Cats Don't Dance would be another one. I don't know. Her being such a small, cute character who's purposefully unassuming because of that, who actually ended up being a big bad, I think was a very interesting thing. Also, as I said with Chrysalis and T-Rex, her team up with them in the final season, I think was a very interesting and fun dynamic for all three characters. That being said, in the debate of should have Cozy Glow been turned to stone with Chrysalis and T-Rex, I think Chrysalis and T-Rex probably deserved it, honestly. But Cozy, I don't think so. I don't know. That's probably a discussion for another day, though. Maniac was a fun villain in Power Ponies that I don't think she really appeared in anything else, and technically speaking, I'm not sure if she's even a real character. Because I'm not sure if Power Ponies actually exist in the same way Daring Do and its characters does. So, kind of an interesting, like, Joker illusion. There, I guess. I don't know. Kind of a fun character, but not that pivotal or important. Stygian, aka his brief stint as the Pony of Shadows. Good antagonist, interesting story arc, but not really one. I think he's more interesting than Sombra in the show, actually, because they go a little bit more into his character than that. And I think the Pony of Shadows is an awesome design. Are the pillars not on here? Yeah, wait, the pillars aren't on here. What the heck? You have whoever this guy is, but you don't have the pillars? Besides... No, you don't have the pillars at all. Odd. I feel like they should have been on here. Whatever, moving on. Bulk Biceps, aka Snowflake, whatever. I think he's he's like a recurring gag character, but I think he's fun. I think the joke is funny. That being said, I'm not sure how many points I could give like a gag character like this. I'll put him like here. There we go. That seems good for Bulk Biceps. Autumn Blaze. Wait a second. I said my favorite one-shot character in the franchise was Tempest. And if I'm being honest, that's still probably true. But Autumn Blaze, I think, is a fairly close second. I wish I could put Autumn Blaze higher because of her one appearance, but honestly, I really wish either the show was longer or she appeared earlier, because I would have loved to see more appearances of Autumn Blaze and the Kieran, but that didn't end up happening, so whatever. I don't know. Her dynamic with Applejack was really fun, her song was amazing. I don't know, it's just like the whole entire episode is genuinely probably one of the best ones of season 8. Sounds of Silence is a fantastic episode, and Autumn Blaze is a fantastic character. Captain Solano from the movie, I remember being fun, and Time to Be Awesome was a fun song. But ultimately, she wasn't really that pivotal to anything, so it was decently fun. I'll put her here. I'm the Friend You Need was a fun song, and Capper was a fun enough character in the movie, but just as it was Solano, I think he was a little more interesting than Solano was. Probably not as high as Skystar, though. Kind of has like fun, kind of like Aladdin Street Rat kind of characterization to him, but could have been more interesting if he was more thoroughly explored. But with that being said, for now, I think I'm gonna put him like right here. Also, I think he might be the closest character to the only full furry character we have in the series. Sorry. Alright, and already ranked Grandparent. So the final character we have on here is Terramar, Silverstream's brother. The whole thing about not being able to choose between Sequestria and the Harmonizing Heights in Surf and/or Turf was very interesting. I think it was a very interesting plot. That could also be like an allegory for multiple different real-world things if you think about it. But ultimately, no, I think he appeared in like 2 episodes. I think he also appeared in the final season as well. He was a fairly fun character for his brief appearances. So I'm going to put him like, from what memory serves, like probably here. Does this look good? Yeah, why are the pillars not on here? And a bunch of these characters, this neutral tier on here. I don't know, it's weird that they're not on here. And it's not like they don't have characters from later in the show. They have like Cozy and the Young Six on here, and they were introduced after the Pillars. I don't know. Anyway, I think I'm going to bump Twilight and Rarity up to Best Ponies tier / Best Creatures tier. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So, for my MLP character tier list, for, of course, the characters that were included on this random tier list I found on Tiermaker, my 5 least favorite characters on the tier list were Prince Blueblood, Sludge, nah, Suri's not below them, Suri Polomare, Prince Blueblood, Sludge, Sven-Gallop, and Spoiled Milk, or Spoiled Rich. And my 5 favorite characters are Rarity, Twilight Sparkle, Discord, Pinkie Pie, and Best Pony Fluttershy. Alright, that about wraps up the stream for the night, I think. As you can tell, I haven't streamed in a while, so I can't guarantee that I'll stream next anytime soon, but I think this is kind of a fun thing to do. I like making these tier lists a lot. So maybe I'll do one soon, maybe I won't, who knows. But anyways, this has been fun. Thank you for anybody who has watched this far into the video, and I'll see you whenever I stream next. Goodbye.